Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be setting up my November bullet journal spreads. It's actually been quite a while. I think February was the last month that I filmed my setup. This has been a bit of a crazy year. I am currently in a phase of life where I'm traveling a lot. I'm interning with a ministry and I traveled a lot this fall and will travel even more in the spring. So keeping up a bullet journal in the midst of all that has been honestly very difficult. For my October spreads, I barely did anything. I think I did one weekly spread, and then for the rest of the month I didn't bullet journal because I simply had no motivation on the times that I was home from my travels. So this month is the first one that I have fully mapped out my spreads, filmed them, and all those good things, and it was a lot of fun. I was glad to get to do it probably one more time before I travel again, because I don't anticipate that I will keep a bullet journal in the midst of my travels in the spring. So as you can see, for this month's theme, I decided to go with a leaf theme, and I genuinely was laying in bed one night and came up with this idea. And so the next day I went out into our backyard and I gathered a bunch of random leaves, tried to keep them all a little bit different, and then I picked just some colors. I picked a green, a brown, like a gold tint, and kind of more of a red, and I covered the leaves in that inky marker and then turned them over and smushed them on the page, and it made leaf imprints, and I think it turned out so cute. I've seen the idea of doing like just the abbreviation for the month on the right hand corner side, as you can see that I've penciled it out here, but I've never actually done that, and so I thought this would be a good month to do that. So I mapped off the area that I did the leaves with washi tape so that it would have a clean edged line. I lost the footage of me doing the lettering here, but as you can see, I just did I don't even know what you would call this font exactly, but just a simple font for the lettering, and I really love how the cover page turned out. If you noticed, at one point I showed the camera my fingers simply because while this was such a fun setup to do, it was incredibly messy because I ended up getting ink all over my fingers as I was covering each leaf. So that's why I showed the camera my inky fingers. I definitely had to wash them before completing the rest of the spreads, and it definitely smeared and rubbed on some of the pages, but that's okay. For the quote for this month, it says, "Beloved, maybe..." Well, honestly, I don't remember what it says right now, but you'll be able to see it in just a second. But you'll notice right here that I did spell maybe incorrectly, and I spelled it M-A-B-Y-E. And as I was showing my mom my bullet journal spreads, which I always enjoy doing right after I finish them, she immediately pointed to that word and brought up the fact that it was spelled wrong, and I hadn't realized it till then, and I was very disappointed. But that's just kind of a real-time moment of that happens in your bullet journal, and you definitely will make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and you can spell words that you're used to spelling all the time wrong just because it happens. But I was able to somewhat fix it later. I just used whiteout and kind of whited it out and then went back over it. It didn't look the greatest, but it was enough for me. So let's see if we can read the quote now. Oh, it says, "Beloved, maybe right now he wants you to enjoy the space between where you are and where you are going." I thought that quote was super fitting for this month for me. As I've already mentioned, traveling before and then traveling soon again, it's very important for me to understand the fact that the Lord wants me to enjoy here at home where I am right now, and so that is what I am striving to do. I wanted to do a washi tape, I guess you could call it like underlay, beneath the cutout edge of the November cover page. So I chose this yellowish, goldish washi tape with tiny, you can probably barely see them, white flowers on it to go under that. My mom actually, she's a fellow stationery lover, and she recently purchased a huge box of washi tape. There's actually 50 of them in it, from Hobby Lobby, one of my favorite stores. And it had so many good fall washi tapes. And so in the majority of the letters, like pen pal letters you've probably seen on my Instagram/channel lately, it's all from that box. So it's very hard to cut the edge when you do a washi tape underlay like that, so I just kind of skipped because it takes me a little while and I have to move my bullet journal at all kinds of different angles. But for the washi tape, I chose this one that's just very fall leaf washi tape. It's got the brown and the red and the gold as the colors I used, so it incorporated the colors really well. And I just tore that in half because I like the look of a torn edge rather than a straight, thick edge. It just seems a little more flowy to me. And then I also used a washi tape that is like cursive writing on it. It almost looks like it came from a book, possibly, with all the words to the book on it. And I used that as well, along with the yellowish gold that I already used. So I am honestly a huge fan of how these spreads turned out. I was a little bit worried about the leaves and whether or not they would show up. The original colors I chose didn't show up, so I had to choose some darker, more pigmented markers because that was the only way that the leaf wouldn't take away from the colors. So I believe it was in August that I began doing this very small monthly overview. If you've followed me for a while, then you know that in the past I've done 2 pages worth of a monthly overview/calendar. But in August, I realized that I really didn't need all that space per day of the month. So I started doing this very small 1-page monthly overview. And obviously I decided it was useful enough to keep because I have been doing that since August and been enjoying that. I also just am happy that the monthly overview doesn't take up that much space. I feel like I've really discovered how to condense my bullet journal pages in the past few months, and honestly at this rate I could probably, well, I'm not sure, but I could probably fit a whole year into one bullet journal rather than 6 months per bullet journal, so 2 bullet journals a year, which is my typical normal. But lately I've really figured out how to condense better, and it's really helped, so we'll see. I do, like, if I were to keep a bullet journal in next year, which like I said, I'm not sure if I'd be able to given my travel schedule, I do plan to change it up a bit. I'm not finding the super planny, like, daily journal very helpful anymore, as I just don't find it very helpful to write down what I do each day because I'm not currently in school, and so there's none of that to track or anything like that. So I'm hoping to possibly change it and shift gears a little bit to be more just kind of a journal, just something I can write thoughts in and things like that, and only journal the day when I feel like it. If a lot happened that day, I would journal for it, but no pressure to journal every single day, especially if nothing big happened that day. So hopefully those changes will come next year if I decide to keep a bullet journal. On the left-hand side, on that cutout, I just did a few more leaf stamps. I didn't want to film that on camera because it takes quite a while and it was a bit of a messy process. But for the right-hand side, I am just doing a simple cursive font, and that is my gratitude log. My gratitude log is one of my favorite parts of my bullet journal. Like I said earlier about having a more personal journal, my gratitude log is certainly very personal. So I always keep just a very personal gratitude tracker in there. And right there, I was looking back on, I think it was my September spreads. I knew I had used this mustard marker color, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't use it for the gratitude log itself because I don't like to repeat, and I like each month's spreads to be very unique and different. So the gratitude logs, I don't know about you, but they always turn out so satisfying. Ever since I started doing this every other marker line, it just looks very satisfying in the end, and I love filling it out. So If you've followed me for very long, you know that I typically do a doodle tracker for my mood tracker, in the sense that I'll draw, like last month it was leaves and acorns, so I just drew the outline of 31 leaves and acorns and then each day filled them in with a color. But as I said, last month I was very unmotivated and really struggled to fill out my spreads. So for this month I decided to go a little bit easier on myself and just do I guess you could call it a grid tracker. So it's literally just 30 boxes for the month of November and 3 different colors for happy, I call it meh, and then sad. And so rather than having to articulately fill in a doodle tracker, all I have to do is literally just fill in each of these boxes with a color. And that ends up making it so much easier on myself, and that's exactly what I needed this month. So I hope that will work out, and I hope I'm a bit more motivated. This is the 4th day of November, and honestly, so far I am motivated, so hopefully that'll stick. So I decided to share the mood tracker with the habit tracker on this page, and I only am tracking 4 habits. Again, I'm condensing a lot. Used to I would track about 9 different habits, but they just weren't things that I found super important, so it was hard to motivate myself to track them. So I'm just doing things that I consider to be very important now. This clip somewhat skipped a little bit, so I apologize for that. But you'll see me here, I'm cutting off the underlay that I previously did, and that is because I decided that I actually wanted to do it on the next page and keep the page I had done it on small, if that makes any sense. I wanted to skip one more page and redo the underlay, so I decided to share that washi tape underlay with my finances tracker. So for this, this is probably one of the most practical aspects of my bullet journal, my finances tracker. I've kept a bullet journal since about November of 2020, and so I'm able to look at my finances ever since that time, and it's incredibly helpful when it comes to things that I have to do with my finances. So for this, if you're wondering how you could track your own, what I do is a larger table for my spending, because I certainly spend more than I make, or more than the checks that I make. And especially for November and December, I typically do a bigger spending table because I will be buying Christmas gifts for friends and family. So I track the amount that I spent, what I spent it on, and the date. And then the smaller table is for work and the checks that I make at work. So that one is simply the amount and the date that I deposited that check. So I redid the underlay, as I said, on this page, and I'm very glad that I did, because I just didn't want to use an entire page for my finances. I wanted it to still be that smaller look, so it just worked out this way to incorporate it there. And then this little bitty table that I'm adding now is just like a positive negative, so I'll determine at the end of the month whether I spent more than I made or whether I made more than I spent. So typically I make more than I spend, but I just always like to keep that to know how much, I guess you could say, I profited that month. So that is super helpful. And then I went back in on all of these spreads and added some more of this washi tape just to make it more cohesive. I did not and have not made any weekly spreads yet, and I'm not sure if I will this month. Like I mentioned earlier, it may be just whenever I feel like it, I will kind of log or journal my day, but I didn't want to pressure myself into daily filling out weekly like what I did that day. So far I've just been filling out the monthly overview, the gratitude, the mood, the habit, and the finances, and it has been totally fine. So here is a final flip through of all of my spreads. I so enjoyed setting this month up. It came very naturally to me because the stamped leaves just really helped take a lot of pressure off. It was honestly a little bit therapeutic to get to just stamp leaves all over it. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making these spreads. If you'd like to see more, stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching.